The basement smelled of rust and old blood, and the kind of fear that soaked into concrete over decades, settling into every crack and crevice like a stain that would never wash clean. Zuri's wrist burned where the zip ties cut deep into her skin, restricting circulation until her fingers tingled with numbness. Her ankles ached in the metal shackles that bit into flesh with every slight movement. Her head pounded with the relentless rhythm of her heartbeat, loud, desperate, stubbornly alive, despite everything trying to silence it. The man in the Savile Row suit sat across from her, like they were sharing afternoon tea at some exclusive club, discussing goo portfolios and summer homes. Perfectly still, perfectly patient, perfectly terrifying in his calm. The serpent and broken crown glinted gold on his lapel, catching the harsh fluorescent light with every breath he took. "Your father was brilliant," he said, his voice smooth as expensive whiskey poured over ice. "Did you know that? Truly brilliant. Not just with numbers. Anyone can manipulate numbers. But with patterns, systems. He saw connections where others saw chaos." Zuri said nothing. Her throat was dry, parched from hours without water. Her body screamed for relief, for mercy, for anything. But she kept her face blank, her eyes hard as stone. "Never let them see you break." That's what her father taught her when she was young, in Lagos, before the world fell apart. The man smiled, reading her silence like a well-loved book. He hid everything in plain sight: bank accounts spanning 12 countries, trade routes that moved billions, shell companies nested inside shell companies like Russian dolls, partners in governments, corporations, criminal syndicates. All of it documented, encoded, scattered across continents in ways we've spent 3 years and considerable resources trying to decode. He leaned forward slightly, his expensive cologne mixing with the basement's mildew. But he made one critical mistake. Zuri's pulse spiked despite her best efforts to remain calm. He taught his daughter the key. The man pulled out a small digital recorder from his inner jacket pocket. Expensive, professional, the kind used for depositions, confessions, evidence that destroys lives in courtrooms. He placed it on the metal table between them with deliberate care. His finger hovered over the play button. "I'm going to play something for you now, Miss Daniels. And I want you to listen very carefully." He pressed play. Static crackled through the small speaker. Then a voice. Her father's voice, clear, warm, alive. "Zuri, baby, listen to me. If you're hearing this, then something's happened. If they came for me like I knew they would. If I didn't make it out." A pause. She could hear him breathing, could imagine him in his office, recording this message in secret, knowing his time was running out. "You need to remember the pattern, the one I taught you when you were 7 years old, the counting game we played on long drives, the rhyme I made you memorize until you could recite it in your sleep. Use the pattern, it unlocks everything, every account, every name, every piece of evidence I've gathered." Zuri's breath stopped in her throat. Her entire body went rigid. This couldn't be real. Where this recording, her father's voice filling this cold basement like a ghost refusing to leave, refusing to let her forget. "Don't trust anyone, Zuri. Not the police, not the government, not anyone who promises to help. They're all compromised, all of them. Don't try to be a hero. Don't try to fight them. Just run. Get as far away as you can. And if you can't run, if they corner you, use the pattern. Trade it for your life if you have to. Promise me." Another pause. Longer this time. Heavy with everything left unsaid. Then her own voice. Younger. Smaller. Innocent. "I promise, Daddy. I'll remember." The recording ended with a click that sounded like a door closing forever. Silence swallowed the room whole. If you're just joining us and you're confused about how we got here, go back and watch part 1 right now. Seriously. This finale won't hit the same without it. You need to see how Zuri saved his life, how the girlfriend betrayed them both, how their destinies collided in the worst possible way. And if you've been here since the beginning, hit subscribe because you're about to see why this story became unforgettable. Zuri's chest heaved despite her attempts to control her breathing. Tears burned behind her eyes like acid, but she refused, absolutely refused, to let them fall. Not here. Not in front of this monster wearing human skin and expensive tailoring. The man watched her with the satisfied patience of a predator who just cornered wounded prey, who could take his time now, who'd already won and knew it. "You recognize it, don't you?" he said softly, almost gently, like a therapist coaxing out a confession. The pattern, the rhyme, the counting game. Zuri's mind raced behind the blank mask of her face. She did remember. Of course she remembered. A childhood game her father had invented. Numbers and words woven together into rhythms that stuck in your head. Long drives through Lagos traffic, her father teaching her sequences, making her repeat them until they became second nature, until she could recite them without thinking. She thought it was just play, just a father entertaining his daughter, just silly rhymes to pass the time. But it wasn't. It was a map, a key, a weapon hidden in plain sight, coded into the memory of a child who wouldn't understand its value until years later, until it was almost too late. Her father had known, had planned for this exact moment, and now she was living his worst nightmare. The man stood slowly, straightening his cuffs with practiced precision. Good, we Charm, he said, reading her silence and the subtle shifts in her expression like they were written in bold print. You remembered. I can see it in your eyes. That flash of recognition, that moment of understanding. He walked toward the door with measured steps. We'll give you some time to think about your options, Miss Daniels, to cooperate willingly and make this easy for everyone. Or we can do this the unpleasant way. The way that involves pain and persuasion and methods I'd rather not employ on someone as intelligent as you. His hand rested on the door handle. But make no mistake, you will give us that pattern. The only question is how much you'll suffer first. The door closed with a heavy metallic sound that echoed in the small space. The lock clicked, bolts sliding into place. Final, absolute, and Zuri sat alone in the darkness, her father's voice echoing in her skull like a prayer she'd forgotten how to say. Use the pattern, but not the way they expected. Min Jae stood at the floor-to-ceiling window of his penthouse, looking out at Seoul's skyline stretching endlessly before him. The city glittered like scattered diamonds across black velvet. Beautiful, cold, indifferent to the violence brewing in its shadows. 40 stories below, the streets pulsed with late-night traffic, neon signs bleeding color into the darkness. People living their ordinary lives completely unaware of the war about to ignite above their heads. June entered quietly, his footsteps deliberate on marble floors that had cost more than most people's homes. All routes out of the city are being monitored, June reported, his voice military crisp. Ports, airports, train stations, bus terminals, even the smaller checkpoints on rural roads. If they try to move her anywhere, we'll know within minutes. Min Jae didn't turn around. His reflection in the glass looked like a ghost, pale, still, barely there. How many people knew about the biometric access to that room? His voice was soft, dangerously soft, the kind of quiet that preceded violence. 4 total, you, me, head of security, and Seorin. And yet someone opened that door during the attack. Someone overrode the system remotely while the power was out, and our security protocols were supposedly engaged. June's jaw tightened, the scar on his cheek seeming darker in the low light. Seorin had access codes. Seorin is locked in a basement cell under 24-hour surveillance, Min Jae said quietly, each word precise as a scalpel cut. She didn't open that door herself. She couldn't have. The timing was too perfect. The execution too clean. Silence stretched between them like a wire about to snap. Min Jae turned slowly, his eyes like black ice reflecting nothing but cold calculation. Someone gave her the override code. Someone inside my organization. Someone I trust. Someone who's been in this family for years. Fed her information. Timing, guard rotations, security vulnerabilities, biometric workarounds. June's face went stone. You think there's a mole? I don't think, Min Jae said, walking to his desk with measured steps. I know. I've known since the moment that poison needle entered my neck at the gala. The placement was too precise. The execution too professional. They knew exactly where I'd be standing, exactly when my guard would be down, exactly how to time it. He pulled up security footage on a tablet, the blue glow illuminating his face as he scrolled through frame by frame, timestamp by timestamp, analyzing patterns invisible to untrained eyes. The attack on the mansion was too surgical. They knew exactly when the power would cut, down to the second, where the guards would be positioned, which hallways had cameras, which rooms she was locked in, what routes would be clear for extraction. He looked up at June, and something in his expression made even the scarred warrior straighten. This wasn't luck. This wasn't good intelligence gathering. This was someone on the inside feeding them our playbook page by page. Min-jae's voice dropped even lower. How many of my men did she have keys to, June? How many of my people are compromised? How deep does this infection go? June's scar seemed to pulse with his heartbeat. I'll find out. Quietly, carefully. No. Min-jae's hand slammed on the desk hard enough to make the tablet jump. Not carefully, quickly. We don't have time for careful anymore. They have Zuri. They're torturing her for information right now. Every hour we waste trying to be subtle is another hour she suffers. Understood. Min-jae's hands clenched into fists on the mahogany surface, knuckles going white with pressure. And June? Yes, boss? When we find them? His voice was colder than death, colder than anything June had heard in 15 years of service. When we find out who sold us out, who poisoned me, who handed Zuri to those animals, make sure they know exactly what happens to traitors in this organization. Make sure they die understanding that some betrayals don't get forgiven, not in this life, not ever. June nodded once, sharp, final. And Min-jae turned back to the window, staring at the city that held his enemy somewhere in its glittering depths. Hold on, he thought. I'm coming. The basement interrogation cell was colder than the one Zuri had been held in, designed specifically to break people down through sheer discomfort. No windows, no natural light, just concrete walls, a metal table, and 2 chairs bolted to the floor. Niseo Rin sat in one, no longer wearing her expensive burgundy gown that had cost more than most people's monthly salary, and just plain gray prison clothes that stripped away every piece of the identity she'd built so carefully. No makeup to hide behind, no jewelry to flash, no designer labels to validate her worth, no mask. She looked small now, breakable, human in ways she'd never allowed herself to be before. Min-jae entered without speaking, the door closing behind him with a sound like a coffin lid. Seo-rin's head snapped up. Hope flared in her eyes. Desperate, pathetic hope that made her look even more broken. Min-jae, please, I can explain everything. Just give me a chance. Explain. His voice was flat, dead, the voice of someone who'd already made his decision and was just going through formalities. She swallowed hard, her throat working visibly. They threatened me. Igwe's shadow, 6 months ago, and they approached me at a charity event, cornered me in the bathroom where no one could see. They showed me pictures. My mother, my little sister, said if I didn't help them, if I didn't give them what they wanted, they'd kill them both. Make it look like accidents, car crashes, gas leaks, things that couldn't be traced. When exactly did they approach you? April, 6 months ago, the spring gala. Min-jae's expression didn't change, but something flickered deep in his eyes. 6 months, half a year of lying beside him every night, sharing his bed, his secrets, his life, pretending everything was normal while selling him out piece by piece. What did you give them? Schedules, your movements, where you'd be and when. Guard rotations, who was on duty, when shifts changed, security protocols, entry codes to certain areas. Her voice cracked. He broke. I didn't want to. I swear I didn't want to. I was scared. I was trying to protect my family. And the poisoning? Seo-rin's face crumpled like paper being crushed. I didn't know they were going to do that. I swear on everything I didn't know. They told me it was just surveillance, just information gathering so they could approach you with a business proposal. When you collapsed at the gala, when I saw you on the floor, I froze. I didn't know what to do. You watched me die. The words hung in the air like a sentence. I was terrified. Her voice rose, desperate, pleading. I didn't know if the poison was still active. I didn't know if touching you would kill me too. I didn't know anything except that I was scared and everyone was watching and I couldn't move. Of saving me, his voice was ice sharpened to a blade edge. Or of being caught? Of everyone seeing that you didn't care enough to try? Seo-rin broke completely. Tears streamed down her face. Ugly. Real. Not the practiced tears she'd used for performances. Both, she whispered, the confession ripping out of her. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I never wanted any of this. I wanted to protect my family. I thought I could control it. I thought I could give them small things and keep you safe, and no one would get hurt. Minjae crouched in front of her, bringing himself to eye level, forcing her to look at him. Where is she? Who? Suri. Where did they take her? Seorin's eyes widened with genuine confusion. I don't know. I swear I don't know. Wrong answer. I don't. They don't tell me anything. I was just a tool to them. A way to get close to you. Once they got what they needed, I became disposable. Just another liability to clean up. Minjae studied her face with the intensity of someone reading a contract for hidden clauses. Read the truth in her tears, in the tremor of her lips, in the desperation radiating from every pore. She really didn't know. She was telling the truth about this, at least. He stood, preparing to leave. Wait! Seorin grabbed his hand desperately, her fingers cold and trembling. They're moving her. Tonight, I heard them talking before the attack. A transfer at 2 a.m. That's all I know. I swear that's everything. Please, please don't kill me. Please. Minjae pulled his hand away like she contaminated him. Like touching her made his skin crawl with disgust. But something in his expression shifted, sharpened. How do you know the transfer time if you're disposable? If they don't tell you anything? Seorin froze. Her mouth opened, closed, opened again with no words coming out. The color drained from her face as she realized her mistake. Minjae's eyes narrowed to slits. Who told you that, Seorin? Who gave you that specific information about the transfer? I overheard. Overheard who? Where? When? She looked away, unable to meet his gaze. Answer me. I can't. He'll kill me. I'll kill you if you don't talk. Right now, in this room, and no one will ever find your body. The threat hung in the air like a blade. Seorin's resolve crumbled completely. The elder, she whispered. The one from the gala. He came to see me after the attack. Told me what to say to you. Told me to give you the transfer time. It said if I did exactly what he instructed, my family would be spared. And in that moment, Minjae understood everything. Someone had fed her that information deliberately, recently, after the attack. Someone who wanted him to know about the transfer. Someone setting an obvious trap and expecting him to walk right into it. Someone who'd been playing both sides from the beginning. Hours passed in that basement, or maybe minutes. Time became meaningless in the unchanging fluorescent glare. The door opened again with its familiar metallic groan. The man in the Savile Row suit returned, this time carrying a sleek laptop under one arm, like a businessman heading to a meeting. He set it on the table between them, opening it with practiced efficiency. Let's try this again, Miss Daniels. No more games, no more delays. The pattern? The rhyme your father taught you. I need you to recite it, now. Suri looked at him with eyes that had gone beyond exhaustion into something else, something clearer. She'd made a decision in the darkness, a dangerous gamble that could either save her or doom her completely. 1 for the river, 2 for the sea, she said quietly, her voice rough from thirst. 3 for the keeper, 4 sets you free. The man leaned forward immediately, excitement barely contained beneath his professional veneer. Go on, don't stop. 5 for the serpent, 6 for the crown, 7 for the hunters, 8 tears it down. His fingers flew across the keyboard, typing rapidly, recording every word. What does it mean? What do the numbers correspond to? Account numbers, Zuri said, the lie flowing smoothly from her lips like water. Each line corresponds to a different bank. The numbers in the rhyme are routing codes. The words are mnemonic devices for remembering the sequences. It was a beautiful lie, a perfect lie. The rhyme was real. Her father had taught it to her exactly as she'd recited it. But it wasn't about accounts or money or hidden wealth. It was a warning system, a code for danger, a way to signal that she was in trouble, that someone was asking the wrong questions, that death was close. 1 for the river meant they're watching. 2 for the sea meant I'm compromised. 3 for the keeper meant I need help. 4 sets you free was the desperate hope that someone would understand and come. But they didn't know that. They heard what they wanted to hear, saw what they wanted to see. Confirmation bias wrapped in childhood poetry. The man's eyes gleamed with predatory satisfaction. Good, very good. Now, where are these banks located? Which countries? Which institutions? Zuri shook her head slowly. I need to see a map, visual reference. I can't remember the locations without seeing them first. My father trained me with maps, made me trace routes with my finger, connect cities, memorize geography. It's how my memory works, spatial association. Another lie layered on the first. The man considered this, weighing options, calculating risks. We're transferring you to a more secure location in 2 hours, he said finally. A facility with better resources. You'll have access to everything you need there. Maps, databases, verification systems. If you cooperate fully, if you give us what we want, you'll be treated well. Comfortable accommodations, food, water, maybe even your freedom eventually. Zuri nodded weakly. Compliant, broken, defeated. Exactly what they wanted to see. Exactly what she needed them to believe. The door closed again, leaving her alone. Zuri allowed herself the smallest smile in the darkness. Good, she whispered to the empty room, to her father's ghost, to whatever was listening. That's where he'll find me. On the road, in transit, vulnerable. She'd just weaponized her own kidnapping, turned her captivity into an opportunity, and now she just had to survive long enough for the rescue that might never come. Min Jae sat at the head of a long table in his war room, a secure conference space deep beneath the penthouse, reinforced concrete and steel, designed to withstand anything short of a direct missile strike. Around the table, June, his scarred face expressionless. Now to the head of security, a former military colonel with dead eyes. 3 of his most trusted lieutenants, men who'd proven their loyalty with blood over years of service, and the elder. The same gray-haired man in traditional hanbok who had stood at the gala demanding Seo-rin prove her devotion by touching Min Jae's dying body. The one who'd ordered Zuri locked in the basement and threatened with death. The one who'd served Min Jae's father for 40 years before serving Min Jae himself. Respected by everyone in the organization, feared for his wisdom and ruthlessness in equal measure. Min Jae had known him since childhood, had called him uncle once, before he understood that family and business should never mix. We have confirmation, Min Jae said quietly, his voice cutting through the tense silence like a wire through flesh. Igwe's shadow is moving their prisoner at 2 a.m. tonight. Highway transfer between safe houses. Minimal security because they think we don't know. The elder nodded gravely, his weathered face showing concern. Then we intercept. Hit them hard and fast. Overwhelming force. Get her back before they can react. Agreed, said the head of security, already calculating logistics. Min Jae's eyes moved slowly around the table, watching faces, reading micro-expressions, cataloging reactions with the precision of someone who'd learned to detect lies before he could read. There's one problem, he said softly. Only 6 people knew the exact location of Zuri's holding room during the attack. 4 with biometric access codes, 2 with system override capabilities. The temperature in the room seemed to drop. Everyone stopped breathing. Seo-rin had access codes, Min Jae continued, his voice conversational, almost casual. But she didn't open the door herself during the blackout. She was too busy playing victim in another part of the mansion. The elder's face remained calm. Too calm. The kind of calm that came from decades of practice controlling every visible emotion. Someone gave her the override remotely, the elder said, his voice reasonable, logical. Most likely, Igwe's shadow hacked into our security systems. Sophisticated operation, well-funded. They had the technical capability. Our systems are unhackable, June said flatly, his tone leaving no room for debate. I designed them myself with protocols that would take a government-level cyber warfare unit months to crack. And this happened in real time during a coordinated assault. No hack. No external breach. The elder's eyes flickered, just for a fraction of a second, but Min Jae caught it. There's another possibility, Min Jae said, leaning back in his chair with deceptive relaxation. Someone inside this room, someone sitting at this table right now, gave Seo-rin that override code. Someone who's been feeding Igwe's shadow information for months, maybe longer. The room tensed like a wire about to snap. Hands moved subtly closer to concealed weapons. Eyes darted to neighbors, measuring threats, calculating survival odds. You're suggesting one of us is a traitor? The elder said, his voice sharp with carefully performed offense. Someone in this room betrayed you? That's a serious accusation, Min Jae. I'm not suggesting, Min Jae said quietly, his eyes locked on the elder's face. Why, I'm stating documented fact. He pulled out his phone with deliberate slowness and played an audio recording. Seo-rin's voice, scratchy through the speaker, filled the war room. He told me the transfer time. He came to my cell after the attack, told me exactly what to say to you, said if I gave you that information, you'd go after her and walk straight into their trap. He said it was the only way to save my family, the only way to end this. Minjae's voice on the recording. Who told you, Seorin? Give me a name. The elder, the one from the gala, the one who's been with your family forever. He's been working with them from the beginning. The poisoning at the gala, it wasn't just Igwe's shadow acting alone. It was coordinated, internal and external. He wanted you dead so he could take control of everything your father built. The recording ended with a click that echoed like a gunshot. Every weapon in the room turned toward the elder in perfect synchronized motion. The old man didn't move, didn't flinch, didn't reach for the gun Minjae knew he carried in an ankle holster. He simply smiled, a cold smile that had nothing to do with humor and everything to do with a mask finally being removed. Clever girl, he said softly, admiringly. I underestimated her survival instincts, underestimated her willingness to burn me to save herself. Why? Minjae's voice was lethal calm, the kind of quiet that preceded executions. Because you're weak, the elder said, his voice gaining strength, losing its grandfatherly warmth and revealing something harder beneath. Your father built this empire with blood and fear and absolute ruthlessness. He understood power, respected it, used it without apology or hesitation. But you try to make peace, sign treaties, build alliances. You're turning us into legitimate businessmen, civilizing us. He stood slowly, his age falling away to reveal the predator he'd always been hiding beneath the wise elder performance. Igwe's shadow offered me what you never could and never would. Real power beyond borders. Global reach that doesn't bow to governments or international laws. A network that spans continents and answers to no one. And the poisoning? Minjae's voice could have frozen blood. Was supposed to look like their work while I positioned myself as the logical successor. With a loyal advisor who would stabilize the organization after the tragic loss of its young leader. Everyone would have accepted it, mourned you, then moved on. He smiled. But that woman, that nobody black woman who should have known her place, ruined 3 months of careful planning by pulling out a needle and playing hero. Minjae's hands clenched so hard his knuckles cracked audibly. Take him, he said quietly to June. June moved like lightning despite his size. The elder didn't resist, didn't fight, didn't beg. He just smiled as guards grabbed his arms. As he was dragged toward the door, he looked back at Minjae one final time. The transfer is still happening, and it's still a trap. They know you'll come for her. They're counting on it. This, he gestured at himself at his capture, was always disposable. A contingency they were willing to sacrifice. I know, Minjae said. Then you're walking into your death for a woman you barely know. Minjae's eyes were black holes. Let them try. The door closed, and Minjae began preparing for war. If you're not subscribed yet, what are you even doing? This story just flipped everything you thought you knew on its head. The elder was the mole. The poison was internal politics, and Zuri's about to either be rescued or killed on a highway in the middle of the night. Hit that subscribe button right now because what's coming next is going to make you lose your mind. 2:17 a.m. The highway stretched like a black ribbon through mountains outside Seoul, winding through terrain that was beautiful in daylight and treacherous at night. Minimal traffic at this hour. Just cargo trucks and the occasional late-night traveler. Perfect kill zone for an ambush. Perfect isolation for screams no one would hear. Zuri sat in the back of an armored SUV, hands still zip-tied in front of her, 2 armed guards flanking her on either side like bookends. She'd been counting since they left the basement. Counting turns, counting stops. Counting the rhythm of the road beneath the tires. Counting her own heartbeats. Her father had taught her this too, how to map a route in your head using nothing but time and motion and careful attention. How to know where you were even when blindfolded. How to prepare for escape opportunities before they appeared. She knew exactly where they were now, 23 kilometers northeast of Seoul proper. Single-lane mountain road with steep drop-offs on one side and solid rock faces on the other. No exits, no turn-offs, no help. The driver's radio crackled with static. Convoy 2, status? Clear, no tails, no contacts. Zuri's heart pounded against her ribs. Come on, where are you? Please be coming. Then lights, bright, blinding, sudden, from ahead and behind simultaneously, boxing them in with perfect timing. The convoy screeched to a halt, tires screaming on asphalt, the smell of burning rubber flooding the interior. Contact! Contact! Multiple vehicles! Gunfire erupted like fireworks. The SUV's windows were bulletproof, but the sound was deafening. Sharp cracks and deeper booms mixing with shouted orders and screams. One guard grabbed Zuri roughly by the shoulder, forcing her down. Stay down! Don't move! She obeyed, making herself small, waiting for her moment. Outside, it was absolute chaos. Minjae's men hit the convoy like a surgical strike. Precise, overwhelming, coordinated with military efficiency. 3 vehicles blocking the road ahead, 2 behind. Nowhere to run. But Igwe's shadow had anticipated exactly this scenario. A secondary team emerged from the tree line, like ghosts materializing from darkness. Ambush positions they'd prepared hours in advance. High ground, cover, overlapping fields of fire. The firefight intensified into something brutal. Inside the SUV, Zuri's mind worked frantically through her limited options. She was still zip-tied, still effectively helpless, still a prisoner regardless of who won this fight. If she stayed in this vehicle, she'd either be killed in crossfire when a stray round punched through a window, or retaken by whoever survived the battle. She needed to create her own opening. The guard beside her was focused entirely on the fight outside, weapon raised, finger on trigger, waiting for targets. Zuri shifted her weight slightly, testing his awareness. Nothing. He didn't even glance at her. The vehicle rocked violently as something exploded nearby. Grenade or RPG, she couldn't tell. The guard cursed viciously, leaning toward his window for a better view. Zuri moved. She slammed her shoulder into him with every ounce of strength her exhausted body could summon, throwing him off balance, using her bound hands as a battering ram. Stop! She lunged forward between the front seats, grabbing the door handle with her zip-tied hands, yanking hard. The door flew open, and Zuri threw herself out of the moving SUV onto cold asphalt. She hit the ground hard. Brutal impact. Pain exploded through her shoulder and ribs and hip all at once. Rolled. Kept rolling instinctively. Away from the vehicle. Away from the gunfire. Gravel and broken glass bit into her skin through her clothes. Gunfire screamed over her head, bullets carving the air where she'd been seconds before. She came to a stop on the road's shoulder, breathing hard, vision swimming with pain and adrenaline, and looked up, directly into the headlights of an approaching vehicle cutting through the chaos. Minjae's car. Through the windshield across maybe 20 meters of war zone, their eyes met. 1 second of pure recognition. 1 second where the entire world contracted to just that moment. This time, he didn't hesitate even for a heartbeat. The car screeched to a violent halt, tires smoking. Minjae was out before it fully stopped, moving like death itself, weapon in hand, his men forming a protective perimeter around him with practiced precision. He dropped to his knees beside her on the cold asphalt. Can you move? Hands, she gasped through gritted teeth. Cut the ties. He pulled a combat knife from his belt, sliced through the industrial zip ties in one clean, efficient motion. Blood rushed back into her wrists like fire. She gasped in pain, fingers tingling violently. Can you stand? Yes. He pulled her to her feet with surprising gentleness, given the violence erupting around them. Behind them, the firefight was reaching its climax. Igwe's shadow forces were retreating into the mountains, taking their dead and wounded, melting back into darkness like smoke. But something felt wrong, deeply wrong, too easy. Zuri's survival instincts, the ones that had kept her alive for 3 years of running, screamed warnings her exhausted brain struggled to process. It's a distraction, she said suddenly, grabbing Minjae's arm. This whole thing, they wanted you out here, away from Seoul, away from... An explosion lit up the distant sky, not here on the mountain highway, in the city, direction of Minjae's headquarters. Orange flame blooming against dark sky like a malevolent flower. His face went absolutely cold. Get her to the safe house, he snapped at June. Now, maximum security. You're not going back there alone, June said, his scarred face showing rare emotion. That's an order. Boss, now! June hesitated for exactly 1 second, then nodded sharply. Minjae looked at Zuri one final time, and something passed between them in that look. something unspoken, something that might have been gratitude or regret or both. "Stay alive," he said, and he was gone, sprinting back to his car, disappearing into the night toward his burning empire. Dawn was breaking over Seoul by the time Min Jae reached his penthouse, or what remained of it. The top 3 floors were burning, not destroyed, not collapsed, just burning with controlled precision, a message written in flame and smoke. "We can reach you anywhere." He stood in the street 40 stories below, watching everything he'd built literally going up in smoke, and felt nothing but cold calculation. His phone buzzed. Unknown number. He answered without hesitation. "Kang Min Jae." The voice was smooth, cultured, the man from the basement, the man who'd been torturing Zuri for information. "You're remarkably persistent. Wang, I respect that quality in adversaries. Where are you?" "Watching you from a comfortable distance. You look tired. Shall we end this dance?" "I'm growing weary of the back and forth." Min Jae's jaw tightened. "What do you want?" "A trade. Face to face. You and me. Civilized conversation between professionals." "For what?" "For the truth you've been chasing for 2 years, like a dog after shadows. Your father's killer. The conspiracy that's been hollowing out your organization from within. Every name, every account, every piece of evidence you'd need to burn them all down." Silence on Min Jae's end. Just breathing, thinking. "I have your father's personal notebook," the man continued, his voice smooth as poison honey. "The real one. Not the copies floating around, not the fragments. The original, written in his own hand, with his private annotations and observations. Proof of who ordered his assassination and why." Min Jae's blood ran cold in his veins. His father had been murdered 2 years ago in what appeared to be a random street robbery. Shot 3 times, wallet taken, watch stolen. The investigation produced nothing but dead ends and false witnesses. But Min Jae had never believed it. "You're lying." "Am I?" The man's voice held amusement. "Red leather cover with gold embossed initials KDJ. Your father's handwriting, that distinctive slant he developed after his stroke. Uses a personal notation system, mixing numbers and chess positions. Final entry dated April 14th, exactly 3 days before his death, reads, 'They're moving against me openly now. If I don't survive what's coming, my son must know the truth. It came from inside our own family.'" Min Jae's breath stopped entirely. Only 4 people in the entire world knew about that notebook. Him, his father's personal secretary who died of cancer 6 months later, and whoever killed him and took it. "Where?" Min Jae said quietly. "Namsan Tower. Observation deck. 1 hour. You come alone, I come alone. Just 2 professionals concluding business. You receive the notebook with all its secrets. I receive something I want in return." "What?" "The girl, Zuri Daniels, she possesses information critical to my organization's operations. You give her to me voluntarily, and you receive your father's truth. Fair trade." The line went dead before Min Jae could respond. He stood in the street as dawn painted Seoul in shades of pink and gold, watching his penthouse burn, holding a phone that had just offered him the one thing he'd wanted above all else for 2 years. The truth about his father's murder, the names of the people responsible, evidence that would let him burn down everyone who'd betrayed his family. All he had to do was trade the woman who'd saved his life. The stranger who'd done what his girlfriend of 3 years couldn't. The refugee with nothing who'd risked everything for a man she didn't know. His hands trembled. For the first time in 2 years, Kang Min Jae didn't know what to do. Jun's safe house was a fortified luxury apartment in the heart of Gangnam, designed to look ordinary from outside while being a fortress within. Zuri sat on an expensive leather couch, her wrists professionally bandaged, her ribs taped where they'd cracked in the fall from the SUV, exhaustion weighing on her like she was drowning in deep water. Jun stood by the window, weapon within easy reach, scanning the street below for threats that might never come. "He's going to trade you," Jun said quietly without turning around. Zuri looked up slowly. "What?" "Min Jae. He's meeting the leader of Igwe's shadow in..." He checked his watch. 37 minutes. They're offering him information about his father's murder. The people responsible, names, evidence, everything he's wanted for 2 years. He finally turned to look at her. "In exchange for you." Zuri's chest tightened until breathing hurt. "And you think he'll do it?" Jun was silent for a long moment, his scarred face unreadable. I think, he said carefully, he's trying to decide whether revenge for his father is worth sacrificing the woman who saved his life, whether justice for the past matters more than honor in the present. Zuri stood slowly, ignoring the sharp pain in her ribs. Take me there. What? To Namsan Tower, right now. Take me there. He gave explicit orders to keep you here under maximum security, and I'm telling you to take me there immediately. This is my choice to make. Not his, not yours, mine. June studied her face with the intensity of someone who'd spent 15 years reading people for signs of weakness or deception. He saw only steel beneath the exhaustion. You understand what you're walking into? Perfectly. He nodded once. Then let's go. Namsan Tower observation deck, dawn fully broken. Seoul spread below like a glittering model city. The man in the Savile Row suit stood at the safety railing, looking out at the view like a tourist appreciating architecture. Min-jae approached from the elevator, alone as instructed. You came, the man said without turning. Where's the notebook? The man held up a red leather book without looking at it. Familiar. Real. His father's handwriting visible even from a distance. Min-jae's heart clenched so hard it hurt. And the girl? Not here yet, but she will be. I have faith in human nature and the choices people make when cornered. Then we have nothing to discuss until she arrives. Fair enough. They stood in silence, two predators sizing each other up, waiting. The elevator dinged. Both men turned. Zuri stepped out, June behind her like a shadow. I'm here, she said quietly, her voice carrying across the empty deck. The man's smile widened with genuine pleasure. Excellent. Precisely on time. I appreciate punctuality in all things. He turned to Min-jae. The trade then, as agreed. No, Zuri said, walking forward with steps that looked steadier than they were. Not as agreed. I'm here by choice. Not as a prisoner. Not as property being traded. This is my decision. She stopped 5 feet from the man. You want the pattern? The code my father supposedly left me? Fine. I'll give it to you. But first, she pointed at the notebook in his hand. Give him his father's truth. The man considered this, calculating angles, weighing risks, then handed the notebook to Min-jae. Min-jae took it with trembling hands, opened it to a random page, saw his father's familiar handwriting flowing across paper, and felt something break inside his chest. Real. Undeniable. The last words of a dead man. His hands shook as he turned pages. Now, the man said to Zuri, his voice sharp with anticipation. The pattern. Tell me where the accounts are hidden. Which banks? Which countries? The routing numbers. Everything. Zuri smiled. It was the coldest smile Min-jae had ever seen on another human being. There are no accounts. The man's expression froze mid-satisfaction. The rhyme wasn't a code for wealth. Zuri continued, her voice gaining strength. It was a warning system, a way for my father to teach me how to recognize danger, how to signal when I was compromised, when someone came asking the wrong questions with the wrong intentions. She stepped even closer, fearless now. He never wrote anything down because he knew people like you, knew you'd torture anyone for information. So he memorized it all, kept it in his head where you could never reach it. And when you killed him, everything he knew died with him. The man's face twisted with pure rage. He reached for a concealed weapon. Zuri was faster. She grabbed the notebook from Min-jae's hands and held it over the observation deck railing. 300 meters of empty air between it and the ground far below. You move, I drop it, she said quietly. Every secret, every name, every piece of evidence about who killed his father, gone forever. The man froze completely. Min-jae's gun was now aimed at his head. You'd destroy the only proof of who murdered your father? The man said to Min-jae, desperation creeping into his cultured voice. The only answers you'll ever get. I would, Min-jae said quietly. Why? Because she's right. This ends. Now. Today. No more chasing ghosts. No more revenge spirals that never end. Zuri looked at the notebook in her hands. Her father's killer was probably somewhere in these pages. Min-jae's answers were definitely here. Names, evidence, justice, everything they'd both been searching for. She met Min-jae's eyes across the deck and let go. The red leather notebook tumbled through 300 meters of Seoul morning air, spinning, falling, disappearing, gone. The man lunged forward with a scream of rage. June's shot echoed across the observation deck like thunder. Igwe's Shadow's leader fell, dead before he hit the ground. Silence descended like snow. Zuri and Minjai stood at the railing, watching the sun rise over Seoul. Everything they'd wanted scattered on pavement far below. Why? Minjai asked quietly. Because if you'd read that notebook, if you'd learned every name of everyone who betrayed your father, you would have spent the rest of your life hunting them down one by one. You would have become exactly what you're trying not to be. Exactly what that elder wanted you to be. She looked at him. I saved you from poison at the gala. I just saved you from something worse, from becoming a monster wearing your father's face. Minjay stared at her like he was seeing her clearly for the first time. You gave up finding your father's killer. I gave up letting his killer define the rest of my life. There's a difference. The wind whipped across the observation deck, cold and clean, and carrying the smell of a city waking up to a new day. And for the first time in 2 years, Minjay felt something other than rage. He felt free. 3 days later, a law office in downtown Seoul. Expensive, corporate, the kind of place where fortunes were made and destroyed with signatures on paper. Seo-rin sat in a leather chair across from her parents, her hands folded in her lap like a child being scolded. Her mother wouldn't look at her. Her father's face could have been carved from granite. Minjay had kept his word about not killing her. He'd done something infinitely worse. He'd sent her family complete documentation of everything. Every betrayal, every piece of information she'd sold, every lie she told. Time-stamped communications, video evidence, financial records showing payments from Igwe's shadow shell companies. Proof that their daughter had conspired with international criminals, endangered powerful allies, and brought catastrophic shame to a family name that had been respected for 4 generations. Her father slid a thick legal document across the polished mahogany table. You'll sign this immediately. Seo-rin's hands trembled as she picked it up, scanning the dense legal language. Complete disinheritance, renunciation of all family support, financial and social. Permanent exile from family functions, properties, and business interests. Appa, please. You are not my daughter. His voice was ice. My daughter died the moment she chose betrayal over honor. You are simply a stranger who happens to share some DNA. The words hit like physical blows. Her mother finally spoke, her voice barely a whisper. You had everything. Everything we worked for. Everything we built. And you threw it away for what? Fear? Cowardice? Greed? I was trying to protect you. By endangering us? Her father's voice rose for the first time. By associating us with criminals who murder people? By making our family name synonymous with treachery? Seo-rin felt tears streaming down her face. She'd wanted status, wanted power, wanted to be someone important in Minjay's world. And Minjay had taken the only thing that truly mattered to her, not her life, her identity, her place in the world, her name. With shaking hands, she signed the document. Her father took it without looking at her, placed it in his briefcase, and stood. You have 48 hours to remove yourself from the family apartment. After that, the locks will be changed and your belongings discarded. Do not attempt to contact us again. Do not use our name in any capacity. You are no longer our concern. They left without looking back. Seo-rin sat alone in that expensive office, listening to their footsteps fade down the hallway. She'd lost everything, and no one had to kill her to do it. 2 weeks later, Incheon International Airport, departure terminal. Zuri stood in the massive glass-walled space, a single backpack over her shoulder containing everything she owned in the world. She'd healed in June's safe house, ribs mended, wrists scarred but functional, nightmares slowly fading, and now she was leaving, going somewhere, anywhere, nowhere specific, just away from Seoul and everything that had happened here. A black luxury car pulled up to the curb outside, expensive and obvious. Minjay stepped out. He'd known somehow, had probably been tracking her through methods she didn't want to think about. They hadn't spoken since Namsen Tower. You're leaving, he said. Statement, not question. Oh, yes. Where? Does it matter? He studied her face with those dark, calculating eyes that had terrified her the first time she'd seen them. I could ask you to stay, he said quietly. Would you? Silence stretched between them like a bridge neither wanted to cross first. No, he said finally, honestly. You deserve better than this world, better than what I am, better than what I'll always be. Zuri reached into her jacket pocket, pulled out the poison needle, the one she'd extracted from his neck at the gala a lifetime ago, the serpent and crown symbol still visible on its base, glinting in the terminal lights. "I'm keeping this," she said quietly, holding it up between them. "As proof of what happened, as insurance for the future." Min Jae's eyes narrowed slightly. "Insurance against what?" "Against you, forgetting who you are. What you could become if you're not careful." She stepped closer, her voice dropping to something intimate despite the crowds flowing around them. "If I ever hear your name connected to the things your father did, the violence, the corruption, the casual cruelty that Elder wanted you to embrace, I'll come forward. I'll show this needle to the world. I'll tell them the story of how the great Kang Min-jae collapsed from poison at his own gala and was saved not by his powerful girlfriend, not by his loyal men, not by anyone who mattered in his world." Her eyes held his without flinching. "But by a nobody, a black refugee waitress everyone ignored, a woman whose name they didn't even know." She leaned in until her lips were near his ear. "I'll remind them that you're human, fallible, mortal, and that you needed help from the person society told you didn't matter." She pulled back, meeting his eyes again. "I'm not your enemy, Min-jae, but I'm not your possession, your debt, or your responsibility either. I'm insurance, a check against power without conscience, a reminder that everyone needs someone sometimes." Min-jae's jaw tightened, muscles working beneath skin. Then, slowly, deliberately, he nodded. "Understood." Zuri turned toward the security checkpoint, shouldering her backpack. "Zuri!" She stopped, didn't turn around. "Thank you," Min-jae said quietly, the words sounding foreign in his mouth, like a language he'd forgotten how to speak. "For saving me at the gala, for saving me again at Namsan Tower, for everything." Zuri looked back over her shoulder, and for the first time since they'd met, she smiled. Really smiled. Not with fear or calculation or survival instinct, with something genuine. "You're welcome, Min-jae. Try to deserve it." She walked into the airport, through security, into the anonymous crowd of travelers going everywhere and nowhere. Min-jae watched until she disappeared completely, swallowed by humanity. Then he turned back to his car, back to his city, back to his empire that had been shaken to its foundations and rebuilt stronger. Seoul glittered before him in afternoon sunlight. His city, his territory, his responsibility. But something fundamental had shifted inside him. He'd been given a second chance at the gala when Zuri pulled poison from his neck. He'd been given a third chance at Namsan Tower when she destroyed the notebook that would have consumed him with revenge. What he did with those chances, how he rebuilt, how he led, and what kind of man he chose to become. That story was still being written. But for the first time since his father's death, Min-jae felt like he had a choice in how it ended. The poison needle was out there somewhere, in a backpack crossing borders, insurance against his worst impulses. And somehow that felt right, like balance, like hope, like freedom. So that's how this story ends. But before you leave, I need to know what you think. Question 1. Did Zuri make the right choice destroying that notebook? Should she have given Min-jae the truth about his father's killer, or was she right to burn those bridges forever? Question 2. Was Min-jae right not to kill Seorin? Did taking away her family name and identity hurt worse than death would have? Or did she deserve worse for her betrayal? Question 3. Who really won in the end? Zuri, who walked away with her freedom and leverage over a mafia boss? Or Min-jae, who kept his empire but lost all his answers about the past? Drop your honest thoughts in the comments below. I'm reading every single one because your perspectives matter. If you want more stories like this, more high-stakes drama, more impossible choices, more characters who feel real and flawed and human, hit that subscribe button right now. Thank you for going on this journey with me from beginning to end. See you in the next story.